Hello, and welcome back to the Business of Happiness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tarryn MacCarthy, and today is going to be an amazing day. Such a gorgeous, exciting day because we're uncovering the next step in the pause framework. So for those of you who are just joining me on this episode, what we're talking about is how to identify and uncover, that is the U in pause, and then transmute when we're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, frustrated, depressed, angry, all those emotions that are so uncomfortable to feel in dentistry or medicine. So this is the CALM CLINICIAN Series. Welcome, welcome. And today we're talking about uncovering. Last episode, we really looked at those 3 A's. Assigning, acknowledging, and affirming, identifying the feeling that you're having. So it's such a superpower to be able to tap into that. I had a client reach out to me just this morning who said, how do you deal with when you wake up on a Monday morning and you just don't want to go to work? What is the mindset that you can use? Right then and there is such a great moment to incorporate that second part of pause, actually the whole part of pause, but giving yourself permission to pause for a moment and just ask yourself, oh my gosh, what am I feeling right now? What am I feeling? Because so quickly we want to just go to the solution. Just give me the mindset shift. But really, the mindset shifts, the positive affirmations won't work. They just won't unless you really identify what's going on with you. Guys, we know this from our work that we do with our own patients. If a patient calls and says, I have pain in my mouth, can you tell me what to do? Just send me a prescription. It's like, no, wait a minute. We have to first uncover what's going on here. We need a little bit of diagnosis. So we can look at that as purely an opportunity to say, okay, pause for a moment. What is going on here? How am I feeling? Am I feeling sad? Am I feeling exhausted? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Am I feeling angry? Really looking at what it is that we're feeling. And then in those 3 A's last time we identified affirming the thought that is feeding the feeling. So as we know, thoughts lead to feelings and feelings lead to thoughts and thoughts lead to feelings and feelings lead to thoughts. And we can't always nail down the thought, but we can identify the feeling. So once we really know, oh, wait a minute, this is sadness that I'm feeling this morning. I'm getting ready for work. I just don't want to go. I'm feeling like I need something to motivate me to go. And what I'm noticing is sadness, or I'm noticing fear. Maybe there's something in your day that's causing you fear. Identifying, oh my gosh, the thought is, I have that uncomfortable conversation with my assistant that I've scheduled at 10 o'clock and I just don't want to do it. And the thought that's causing the fear is, I'm not good enough as a leader. I'm not good enough to have this conversation, or I'm scared that she's going to get angry. Just identifying the thought is so important. Today, we're looking at you, the next step, which is uncovering. And I say uncovering because what we're uncovering is, who does that thought or that belief actually belong to? What? Guys, 99.9%, the thoughts that are of the time, the thoughts that are going through your head are not your own. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? So often the thoughts that you're thinking are not your own. So then whose is it? Tarryn, what? Whose thought is this then? And where do our thoughts come from? You know, it's so fascinating to me working with incredible men and women like you in medicine and dentistry who have relied on the brilliance of their thoughts, who have relied on their intellect and think that their thoughts equate to their intellect. And I'm here to tell you they are wholly different. You are brilliant. And you are so good at learning and at applying new learned material to your craft, to your expertise. You are so good at assimilating new insight. And I know you love to learn, otherwise you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. In fact, I'm going to even venture to say learning is one of your love languages, right? And we love this about the work we do. We love saying we're lifelong learners. So the value of our intellect and our thoughts is so high. So it's really scary for me to come in here and say, guys, sometimes your thoughts are not your own. In fact, most of the time, your thoughts are not your own. What? It's true. Our thoughts are just fleeting neuronal connections that happen out of nowhere. And often they are not our own. They're like earworms that have been spoken to us at important times in our lives that kind of got stuck in there and sometimes are on this repeat. I'm sure you've noticed that. And maybe you haven't if you haven't paid attention to your thoughts. But you are not your thoughts. You are the being who has thoughts. You are the being who has impulses. You're the being who has arms and legs. You are the being who has a heart beating. You are the being who has blood flowing through your veins and arteries. But that is not who you are. You are a conscious being who has thoughts, and your thoughts are not always your own. So where do our thoughts come from? Well, often our thoughts come from our upbringing. I mean, that's when you were the sponge, just drawing in information, and every word that was spoken and action and sound and smell and event that was taking place in your world was being soaked up by this 24/7 camera, video camera that was just recording. And so much of what the people around you said to you and said near you impacted the way you think today. Isn't that fascinating? Things your grandma used to say, things your sister used to say, things your mother used to say, things your father used to say, and especially when there was some heightened emotion going on. So some thoughts that you have about money may have originated from your parents fighting about money when you were little, and that felt scary. It felt scary when parents were fighting. That felt like a threat to your safety, and now you equate money as being dangerous, or there's not being very much of it, depending on what happened. So the thoughts that you have are directly related to these very precious moments in your time, in your life. One of my clients remembers her grandmother saying, "It's the daughter's role to keep the family together." Just that one little phrase she's held on to for her whole life long. And right now, her family's going through some turmoil and people are in arguments around her. And she feels like she has to interject and hold everyone together. And it is exhausting. It's feeling like a full-time job in addition to her dental practice. And she said to me, it's just exhausting. But she couldn't stop thinking, it's my responsibility. If I don't do it, who will? Isn't that so fascinating? We get to now, after we pause, identify that feeling that's happening, that stress, that overwhelm, recognize the thought behind it. Oh yeah, I'm thinking and believing that it's my role as the daughter in the family to keep this family together. Now we get to the third letter in the pause acronym, uncover. Whose thought is this anyway? Whose belief? How have I taken this thought and turned it into a deep-seated belief? And the really interesting thing about beliefs is beliefs are just thoughts you keep thinking over and over and over again. They're just these thoughts that feel really real. But yeah, it is. And we defend them, right? We have such a great defense of our beliefs because they feel so real because we've been thinking them for decades. So even the thought for this client was, well, of course it's the daughter's role to hold the family together. Like, of course, I'm the one that's capable. I'm the one that's the best one. And if I don't do it, who's going to do it? It feels so real because it's become a belief of hers. But we get to uncover it and identify and challenge it, really, and say, wait a minute, whose thought is this anyway? Is this mine? Or in this case, my client identified, It was her grandmother's. It was not hers. Another place where thoughts come from often is our schooling, your education, because once again, our schooling is when we put our teachers and our professors up on such a pedestal, just like we do our elders as we're younger. So we think they know so much better than I do. Anything that teachers say can easily be impregnated into our threads of our being because we really held them in such high regard at one point in our lives. And they set the standards for us decades ago. Isn't that interesting? Decades ago. So some of these thoughts and beliefs maybe served us a very long time, but are no longer serving you at this time because it's an outdated paradigm. Maybe it used to be something that was kind of true, but now it really isn't anymore. And holding on to that thought or belief is not helping you anymore. It's especially true in medicine and dentistry if you've been in private practice for a couple of years or decades. Because remember, for instance, I graduated from dental school in 2002. So my faculty in 2002 were giving me sound, beautiful, incredible advice from 20 years ago. Things have changed. And so, of course, we need to allow ourselves to evolve in our thought process. And that's what's so great about the letter U in the PAUSE acronym is because once we uncover it, we can realize, oh my gosh, that's something that Dr. Weingart said 20 years ago that doesn't necessarily apply to 2024 orthodontics. Isn't that interesting? So we get to actually uncover who this thought or this belief actually belonged to. And sometimes they belonged to someone who has no concept of our current experience. Many times we held people in esteem because of their title or their position or their experience, but we didn't realize that our experience is wholly different. In other words, maybe it was a man who gave you as a woman some expert advice that really is not true anymore. Or maybe it was someone who didn't have a family and you do. Or maybe it was somebody who was in academia and you're in private practice. This beautiful, I love this part of this acronym because we get to really distance ourselves, separate ourselves from the thought. That thought that you had in your mind this whole time, we get to tease out and say, oh, wow, do I still want to think this thought anymore? Do I still want to believe this belief anymore? Imagine this, 3 days away from work, 3 days away from your regular life, from your family, from the day-to-day hustle and bustle, to just rest and reconnect with you. Here's the truth. Nobody knows you like you do. Nobody knows the joys and the sorrows and the fears and the frustrations and the stresses and the overwhelm and the exhaustion and your patience and your team and your family. Nobody knows what you're going through better than you. Nobody knows what brings you joy and fuels you and fulfills you. Nobody knows your dreams and desires like you do. And the secret to how to access that beautiful wisdom inside of you, the guru inside of you, waits for you at the Empower Her Retreat. This incredible retreat happening this October 17th through 20th is an opportunity for you to fall back in love with yourself, to identify your directional compass, and to lean into trust, self-trust, the trust of that inner wisdom. www.empowerherretreat.org. Join us there. Sign up. There are only a few spots left. This is your opportunity to change the direction of your life. I remember one of my professors in dental school once said to me, when you fail to prepare, you better prepare to fail. Brilliant advice, right? Such good advice. I'm sure you've heard that before. It's a very old paradigm that we've heard before. When you fail to prepare, you better prepare to fail. And man, did that serve me. I have been so prepared for so many things until a certain point. And then I realized, wow, I'm really over preparing. My experience after decades of doing this really has been the preparation I need. And I don't need to sit up at night over preparing, wasting my sleep, stressing my body out, anticipating all the different computations of what might happen. I was thinking and worrying and pushing myself to a place where I was anticipating all the problems that could happen. At one point, that was very admirable, right? That was when I was showing up in my ortho presentations in front of the orthognathic board and presenting a case. Of course, I had an extra battery in my packet, an extra light bulb for the projector. I had, copies for everyone. I'd thought everything through. But that level of anxiety and stress no longer serves me because now I have decades of experience. So that thought, when you fail to prepare, you better prepare to fail, such a beautiful one, but it's not mine. And it's not mine in this moment. It might have been mine 10, 20, 30 years ago, but uncovering who it really belongs to allows me to separate myself from it. Let's talk about some other places where thoughts might be influenced from. Your religion or your religious background or the community you grew up in. Hey, society itself. Another big one that I think our society really entrenches over and over and over again is, if I'm not busy, I'm not successful. And another example from one of my clients who was, she had a day that was scheduled full of patients and the whole schedule fell apart in the afternoon. For some reason, 3 or 4 patients, which to her equated her whole afternoon, canceled, rescheduled, they had COVID, I don't know what happened. And she went into a panic. Nothing was wrong. She still had patients in schedule the next day. She had this beautiful practice that had been successful for the past 7 years, carrying itself beautifully. But the fact that 3 patients in an afternoon canceled back to back and she had hours open in her schedule all of a sudden put her in a panic. Pause. Pay attention to your body. And that's what she did. She noticed, oh my gosh, I'm breathing fast. I'm beginning to feel anxiety. My shallow breathing, my heart rate, and I'm noticing them getting really snippy to everybody else. That's the first P. A, acknowledge. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling uncomfortable. My shoulders are tense. A sign. She noticed this is stress, fear. She uncovered that feeling underneath and realized, oh my gosh, this is fear. I'm scared. And then she assigned it to the thought. And the thought was, my practice is going to fall apart. I'm going to go bankrupt. I mean, she literally went that fast. That thought spiraled really quickly. And she identified, if I'm not busy, I'm not successful. Boom. Now we get to uncover, whose thought is that really? And she recognized that this has been a societal expectation, where if you're not actively busying, accomplishing, doing something constantly, it looks like you're not busy. Even just saying that word, I recognize it, right? Especially in dentistry. I'm not busy right now. Equates to, I'm failing. My business is going downhill. That's a societally supported thought and belief. But once we recognize it, that it's just a thought, and it doesn't have to be yours, we get to pull it out and say, wow, is this thought actually serving me anymore? And that I'm getting ahead of myself here. Just uncovering it and recognizing this is not mine. This is actually somebody else's or society's or a group of people's thoughts or beliefs. But I actually get to understand it for myself. Ironically, this incredible client of mine, the one thing she's been looking for is calm in her life, spaciousness, work-life balance. All of a sudden, the universe gifted her 3 hours of nothing, and she was spiraling out of control. Simply because of the thought. Uncovering that the thought was not hers. that she did not want to be busy all the time was a huge gift. Wait a minute. That's just a thought. That's just a belief that's not mine. I get to actually separate myself from it. Another huge source of thoughts that influence our thinking is Facebook and Instagram, social media, because man, that's where people project their best selves. Remember, social media for many people is marketing. That's all it is. Surprise! You thought they were sharing about their families. They're marketing. That's what they're doing, even if they're not aware of it. They're selling themselves. And of course, you're going to sell yourself in the best light, but it's not a thought that's yours if it's influencing your thinking. Another source of thinking, and I think I've mentioned this before, is that one pearl of wisdom that someone said to you 10 years ago that's been serving you this whole time. And it's been that one thing where this is what I do. This has kept me going. And sometimes that one thought actually brought you a ton of success. But as your life is changing, as your body is changing, as your family is changing, as society is changing, it is so important for us to challenge those thoughts and consider them again. Just question everything. So when you uncover the thought and uncover who it really belonged to and recognize, oh my gosh, that is a piece of advice that someone gave me 10 years ago at a study club. Or 10 years ago, I heard it on a podcast. Or 10 years ago, my nutritionist said that. But my body is 10 years later now. I get to ask myself, whose thought is this really? Wow, this belief that I've held on to this whole time, it wasn't even mine. And is it even relevant anymore? This is a powerful one. It's a powerful one. And it cannot be done without those first two steps, which is awareness. And remember, I think I mentioned this in our last podcast episode. We have 60,000 thoughts a day. 60,000! There's no way we can be aware of every single thought we think. It's not humanly possible. But we can be aware of how we feel. And the feeling is the indicator of what you're thinking. And once you identify what you're thinking, we get to uncover, who did this actually belong to? Is this really mine? Do I even choose to keep this as mine? Oh, so exciting. This, by the way, is the magical mindset work, because it's not just about mindset. As I've mentioned before, your mind is not different from your body. It is the same. We are not separated at our necks. We don't just have our heads disconnected from our bodies. This is the one place where I think science has done us a disservice over many years, is we've put thoughts and mindset and emotion and body, the feelings in your body and the behavior of your body in totally separate buckets. And they're actually so beautifully interwoven and interconnected. And we can understand them very simply using this pause method that I'm offering you. And that's what really supports us to show up in our best selves for our patients, for our teams, and for our families. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is so amazing, I invite you to go back and listen to those first few episodes in the CALM Clinician series. And if you're recognizing, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I need more of, but I don't even know how to incorporate it into my life, I'm inviting you to the Empower Her Retreat. It's happening this October, the October 17, 18. We arrive on the 17th, 18, 19, and 20 is the retreat. And it is going to be all about supporting you in uncovering these beautiful insights, trusting yourself. That's the most important part. And then how to do it in real life. That's really what we're doing at this retreat. I don't want you to leave with a bunch of academic insight and then no application into your life. I want you to have real, excited action items when you get home so that you can actually make big differences and changes in your life based on this new knowledge and on trusting yourself. Because what I've witnessed so much is therapy is so amazing. And I even go to therapists every now and then. I think they're amazing in what they do. But often we can go through years and years and years and years and years of talk therapy and never get actual changes or action items on how to address issues when they happen in our lives. And that's really what I'm invested in as a coach, is how to support you going forward so that you're not dependent on me, but you have the tools and the practices to help yourself when something big happens. When your office manager of 20 years gives her 2-week notice. When your nanny, who you've relied on for 10 years, suddenly has to take care of someone else's children. When something big happens in your life and you have to have a dissolution in a partnership, or you realize it's time to take action on your dreams and finally purchase that practice or sell that practice. These big moments that we don't always plan for, a physical diagnosis, a health diagnosis. What I'm interested in is, how can I give you the practices and tools so that you can take these moments from a place of deep confidence and self-trust so that you can't make a mistake? Because that trust in yourself is so deep. That is where we're going. When you recognize I am exhausted and I need to make changes in my life, and you can trust yourself to hold those boundaries to create that change. That is what we're looking for at the Empower Her Retreat. So if you're interested in the Empower Her Retreat, connect with me. Let's connect and see if this is right for you. It's a small, intimate group, only allowing a few women to this beautiful opportunity of healing, transformation, and trust. And until next time, when we're going to be talking about the next letter in the PAUSE acronym, which I'm so excited to bring you, S, the letter S, I invite you to just use what we've talked about today. Start uncovering. When you identify that thought, ask yourself, whose thought is that anyway? And often those thoughts, by the way, have the word should in them. I should XYZ. I really should be. And just ask yourself, wow, isn't that interesting? Whose thought is that anyway? All right, my friends, this is so exciting. I love this work. Remember, when you feel good, that is when you can do good. Bye-bye. Hey, beauty, if you enjoyed this episode, then like and subscribe to the show and receive this beautiful message of empowerment, remembering what you are capable of and the purpose you serve in this world every single week. And if you know of a colleague who needs this message, share this episode with her. This is how we raise the collective in healthcare, reminding one another and supporting one another. Community is the answer. This is how we grow it. And lastly, I invite you to a phenomenal in-person event this October 2024, the Empower Her Retreat, exclusively for women in medicine and dentistry on the beach. It will change your life. And I cannot wait to see you there. Check out the details in the show notes and have a phenomenal day remembering that you are enough.